Hello, I'm Mr. eTutor, your mystery tutor here at mysterytutor.com, and welcome to video module 12-1. In this module, we'll be discussing the strategic aspects of taking the AP tests, which are also prepared by the College Board, just like the SAT-1 and the SAT subject tests. Unfortunately, the AP tests cannot be analyzed as rigorously as the SAT-1 or the SAT subject tests, and their scoring system reflects that. Unfortunately, the AP tests are not standardized as rigorously as the SAT-1 or the SAT subject tests. To review briefly, every section of the SAT-1 and each of the individual SAT subject tests is scored on a scale from 200 to 800 with 10-point gradations along the way. These small 10-point distinctions between individual scores can only be made on a reliable and consistent basis because each of those tests covers essentially the same thing every single time. You need to have that sort of thorough consistency in order to be able to generate a scoring system like the SAT-1 and the SAT subject tests use. On an AP test, however, there are only 5 possible scores, as opposed to the dozens and dozens and dozens of possible scores on an SAT-1 section or a subject test. As test takers, we'd want to ask ourselves why this is. One possible motivation for the AP scoring system is the fact that a less specific scoring system allows the test maker a little more latitude in determining what will appear on the test from one year to another. Another likely factor is the fact that more free response types of questions appear on the AP tests, and when they do appear, they are weighed more heavily on the AP than they are on the SAT-1 writing test. Creating these free response types of questions is inherently subjective, and no matter how hard the College Board tries, it will be almost impossible to resolve the scores to anything more definite than a 1 through 5 scoring system. Now, you may be wondering why you should care about any of this. Here's the reason. The AP's more relaxed scoring system means that you don't have to know quite as much stuff to make a perfect score on the test as you would need to know for the SAT subject test or the SAT-1. On those tests, you have a smaller margin of error, but on the AP, you've got a much wider margin of error that will still land you with a perfect score of 5. This type of thing can be very useful to keep in mind if you find yourself in the unenviable position of having to take 4 or 5 APs in a week. So remember, the AP's scoring system actually allows you a little bit more leeway for that perfect score than the scoring systems for the other 2 types of tests do. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the ways that AP tests are similar to the SAT-1 and SAT subject tests. First of all, the same wrong answer penalties still apply on the AP that we found on the SAT-1 and the SAT subject tests. So, just like on those other 2 types of tests, I am instructing you not to guess on the AP tests. I've seen many students who frankly should not have done very well on their APs manage to pull out 3s just by answering only the questions that they were absolutely positive about and leaving blank anything they didn't know. And the same ideas that we talked about for multiple choice on the SAT subject tests also apply here. So remember, the multiple choice sections of these AP tests can never directly measure what you actually know. They can only measure how well you separate the right thing from the wrong things. So when you come across a question that seems challenging, think about what you do know and try to approach the question from that perspective. Look for ways to separate out what doesn't make any sense from what does make a little bit of sense, and the thing that makes a little bit of sense when nothing else makes any sense will be the correct answer. Finally, one last tip. If you're allowed to bring a calculator with you into your test, make sure that you type any notes or last-minute comments that you might need into the calculator so you'll be able to refer to them when you need them. Even if you don't actually look at the notes in your calculator, just knowing that they're there will tend to make you more confident and relaxed. Finally, just as with any other College Board test, you want to make sure that you only practice with real APs that were administered in previous years. If you don't have any of these, you can order them from the College Board's website at www.collegeboard.com. Also try asking your AP course teachers because often they have copies of tests from previous years too. Now, just as with the SAT subject tests, I am not an expert on every single subject area that the AP tests cover, believe it or not. And, as I already mentioned in connection with the SAT subject tests, I am not in the habit of teaching people stuff that I don't know. I want you to know that you can trust every piece of advice you hear from me, and that's why I don't give advice where I don't know what I'm talking about. So here's what I've done. If you head over to www.mysterytutorvault.com, you'll find a forum dedicated to AP questions. In that forum, I and the fantastic members of MrTutorVault.com will be more than happy to help you with any AP questions you might have. Thanks very much for watching, and remember, even with the APs, it's easier than you think.